Okay, so for activity 3.3, out of the 9 things listed, I thought only 4 were important. The rest I considered to be optional or unnecessary. The 4 I chose were a certain amount of teaching experience, the ability to motivate others, agreement with your own educational principles, and previous experience in facilitating CPD. For teaching experience, I wouldn't necessarily put a number on this. I've known teachers only a few years post-CELTA who are far more professional in their attitude, with a wide variety of experience and good sound knowledge of pedagogy and language teaching methodology, more so in some cases than teachers who've been teaching for years, and even some of those who've climbed the rungs to management positions. So I think it really depends on the individual. The ability to motivate others is pretty fundamental for me, really. I think there's no point in having a CPD coordinator who is unable to motivate their staff to get involved in their own, to get engaged with their own PD. I think there are lots of different ways to motivate people, and I don't think an outgoing personality is crucial. I think things like empathy and diplomacy and a fair degree of enthusiasm for the job are far more important qualities. Agreement with education principles, not in a purely egotistical way, but I would need to be confident that this candidate was up to date with current thinking underpinning classroom practice. Having different opinions and perspectives is one thing, but having fundamentally clashing views could indicate serious future problems if this person was in charge of mentoring your teaching staff. And experience of facilitating CPD. I'm undecided as to whether this is crucial or desirable. I think it really depends on the individual and what else they would bring with them in terms of experience and personal qualities to the role, as well as how autonomous the role would be or to what degree management will be collaborating in creating this new CPD system and so on. Just scrolling my notes, sorry. What's missing? For me, it's the fact that the candidate would have to have a proper second language teaching qualification, such as CELTA or BEd, TESOL as a minimum, and this would actually be the first thing on my list. I think a Delta, a DIP or similar would be highly desirable in most cases, but as I mentioned before, I would take prior career experience into consideration as well. 3 questions to ask. I found this hard to narrow down to 3 questions. Instead, I thought about 3 key areas that I would want to ask questions about. Key area 1 being their values around training. So questions like, what is the purpose of CPD, and what do you think is the key to effective training? Things like that. Key area 2, their experience of training. So questions like, what training methods have you used and found most effective? Or tell me about a recent training program you were involved in. How did you ensure and measure its success? How will you identify training needs in our organisation? And so on. And key area 3 being their own CPD. So questions like, what would you say are your personal strengths as a trainer? Can you give me an area in which you've developed as a result of your own PD? Questions like that. How would I check the main criteria were met? I wasn't sure whether this meant at the time of recruitment or after a term of employment. So upon recruitment, I would be asking very specific target questions to the candidate and then following up with similar questions to their referees to see how aligned their answers were. By asking for a documented overview of a previous program of training or evidence of training materials. Basically, I'd want something to look over and consider after the interview. Maybe asking the shortlisted candidates if they would deliver a short trial PD session to teachers on a topic of their choice. And this isn't something I would expect when employing a teacher, but I think it's a not unreasonable expectation for a trainer. And then over time, after a term of employment, I would be looking at, first of all, the self-review by the CPD coordinator themselves, some form of end-of-year appraisal by management, evaluation and feedback from teachers, and also general review of the impact and outcomes of the training and the CPD on teaching and student achievement within our organisation.